There is no betrayal more piercing than the one that comes from the hands of those you once trusted, the very people you held close to your heart. It is one thing to face the cruelty of the world, to endure the malice of strangers, but when the wound is inflicted by your own family, your closest friends, those you called your own, it shakes the very foundation of your soul. It is a sorrow that is not loud, yet it echoes in the depths of your being, a grief that does not always bring tears, yet it weighs down your spirit like an anchor. The scriptures speak of such betrayals, reminding us that even the righteous have walked through the fire of heartbreak. For a man's enemies will be the members of his own household, Matthew 10:36. These words hold a painful truth. Sometimes the ones we expect to protect us, to love us unconditionally, are the very ones who cause us the most harm. It is a trial that shakes even the strongest of faiths, leaving us to question, why does God allow such suffering? Why must we endure betrayal at the hands of those we love? Perhaps it is because pain has a purpose. God does not permit suffering without meaning. He does not allow wounds to be inflicted upon your heart without preparing a greater healing. The betrayal you face is not a sign of abandonment. It is a test of refining fire through which He is shaping you into something greater. Consider the story of Joseph, a man favored by God, yet sold into slavery by his own brothers. His journey was one of suffering, of isolation, of injustice. Yet, through every trial, the Lord was with Joseph and he prospered. Genesis 39:2. What seemed like betrayal was, in fact, divine redirection. What seemed like suffering was the very process that led to his destiny. And so, I ask you, could it be that your pain is not meant to break you, but to build you? Could it be that the rejection you are facing is God's way of leading you into a future that is free from the chains of toxic love? It is not easy to accept this truth. The heart longs for understanding, for reconciliation, for love that does not wound. But not every person in your life was sent by God. Some were placed in your path as lessons, as tests of faith, as reminders that your peace does not come from human hands, but from the one who never fails. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. John 14:27. This is where the real battle lies, not in seeking revenge, not in begging for love that was never true, but in choosing peace over chaos. In understanding that walking away is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. 1 Corinthians 15:33. The people you surround yourself with shape your soul. If those closest to you are breaking your spirit, it is not disloyalty to step away. It is obedience to God's call for your well-being. Yet even as you distance yourself, the pain lingers. The mind replays the memories. The heart aches for what was lost. The temptation to return, to keep hoping, to keep forgiving without boundaries. It is strong. But hear this truth. Love does not require you to be destroyed. Love does not demand that you suffer endlessly in silence. The greatest love you can give to yourself is the strength to let go of those who refuse to honor your heart. You are not alone in this journey. The Lord sees your suffering, and He will not leave you in despair. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. Even when the pain feels unbearable, even when the silence of separation is deafening, trust that God is near. He is healing what they broke. He is restoring what they stole. And He is preparing a future where your heart will no longer be at war with itself. So, I ask you, will you trust Him? Will you have the courage to step away from what is harming your soul, even if it means walking alone for a season? Will you believe that God is not taking something from you, but making space for something far greater. Because the truth is this: when those you love hurt you the most, it is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of something new. And if you allow Him, God will take your pain and turn it into power. Now, let's open our eyes to the truth. If you are trapped in a toxic relationship, if your spirit is constantly burdened by the actions of someone close to you, it is time to recognize the signs. Here are 7 crucial indicators that reveal when someone in your life is no longer a source of love, but a source of harm. There is a silent kind of destruction that does not come from open insults or physical harm, but from the slow, steady erosion of your self-worth. It is the look of disappointment in their eyes when you share your dreams. It is the dismissive tone they use when you express your feelings. It is the constant feeling that, no matter what you do, it will never be enough for them. When someone you love constantly diminishes your worth, they do not have to say the words outright. It is in the small, seemingly insignificant ways they dismiss you. The way they ignore your achievements, the way they turn your victories into trivial matters. At first, you convince yourself that they do not mean it, that perhaps they are just having a bad day, that they will recognize your value eventually. But as time passes, the pattern remains, and with each moment of rejection, something inside you begins to shrink. But let me remind you of something powerful. God never created you to be small. He never intended for you to live under the weight of someone else's disapproval. The scriptures remind us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139 verse 14. If the Creator of the universe saw fit to design you with care, if He wove every detail of your being with love, then why should you allow another human being to make you feel like you are not enough? And yet, this is what happens when you allow someone to continuously diminish your worth. Their words become seeds of doubt planted in your mind. At first, they are just whispers. Maybe I am not good enough. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe if I try harder, they will see my value. But over time, those whispers grow louder, and before you know it, you are living your life in the shadow of their opinions, measuring your value by their reactions. Think about how the enemy works. He does not always attack you with obvious destruction. Sometimes he uses the people closest to you to chip away at your confidence, to weaken your spirit, to make you question what God has already declared over your life. And if you are not careful, you will start living in the prison of their judgment, forgetting that no human being has the authority to define your worth. Look at the story of David. Before he became king, before he was known as the giant slayer, he was just a shepherd boy. When the prophet Samuel came to anoint the next king of Israel, David's own father did not even consider him worthy enough to be presented. 1 Samuel 16:10-11. Imagine that. His own family looked at him and saw nothing but an insignificant boy tending sheep. But God saw something greater. Where others saw a nobody, God saw a king. Now, tell me, are you allowing yourself to believe the voices that dismiss you? Or are you listening to what God says about you? Because the truth is, when someone constantly diminishes your worth, they are revealing far more about themselves than about you. Their inability to recognize your value does not mean you have none. It simply means they are blind to the greatness God has placed inside you. But here is the danger. If you remain in this environment, if you continue allowing them to dictate how you see yourself, you will start believing their lies. You will start second-guessing your abilities, hesitating before speaking your truth, shrinking yourself to avoid their criticism. And before you realize it, you have become a version of yourself that is unrecognizable, watered down, muted, living in fear of disappointing people who will never truly appreciate you. God did not call you to live like this. He called you to walk in confidence, to step boldly into the purpose He has prepared for you. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. If this is true, and it is, then why would you waste another moment allowing someone else to make you feel small? Consider this. If someone's love comes with constant belittling, is it really love? If someone's presence in your life requires you to dim your light just to make them comfortable, are they truly meant to be in your life? Because real love, godly love, does not seek to control, diminish, or belittle. It lifts, it encourages, it strengthens, and yet so many people stay. They stay because they fear being alone. They stay because they believe that if they just work harder, love deeper, prove themselves more, then maybe, just maybe, this person will finally see them, finally appreciate them. But let me ask you, how long will you keep waiting for someone else to validate what God has already confirmed? You were not made to live in the shadows of someone else's doubts. You were not made to constantly defend your worth to someone who refuses to see it. If someone in your life is committed to diminishing you, then it is time to ask yourself whether they truly belong in the future God is preparing for you. Because you cannot walk into your destiny while dragging the weight of someone else's rejection behind you. Now pause for a moment and reflect. Who in your life makes you feel small? Who has made you question your worth? Not because of what they say directly, but because of the way they treat you. Are you constantly walking on eggshells, trying to prove yourself to someone who refuses to acknowledge your value? If the answer is yes, then it is time to reclaim your power. Not by arguing, not by pleading, but by recognizing that your worth was never meant to be placed in the hands of another human being. It has already been set by the one who formed you. And that is the only validation you will ever need. There is a kind of control that does not come with force, nor does it arrive with threats. Instead, it wraps itself in the disguise of love, weaving its way into your heart, making you feel obligated, indebted, and forever guilty for wanting to break free. This is the weapon of manipulation through guilt, and it is one of the most dangerous tactics used by those who claim to love you. At first, it is subtle. It starts with small comments, gentle reminders of all they have done for you. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? If you really loved me, you wouldn't act this way. I sacrificed so much for you, and you can't even do this one thing for me? These words may not seem harmful at first. In fact, they may even sound reasonable. But over time, they begin to shape how you see yourself, how you see them, and how you make decisions. Guilt is a powerful weapon. It does not need to be loud, nor does it need to be aggressive. It works in whispers, wrapping itself around your heart like chains, making you feel responsible for the happiness and well-being of someone else. And once guilt takes root, it makes you easy to control. You begin to say yes when you want to say no. You begin to apologize when you have done nothing wrong. You begin to compromise your own needs, your own peace, just to avoid feeling like you are letting them down. But let me tell you something. God did not place you on this earth to be enslaved by guilt. He did not call you to carry the weight of someone else's emotional manipulation. In Galatians 5:01, it is written, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." That means you were not created to live in bondage, not to sin, not to fear, and certainly not to the guilt imposed upon you by others. Yet, many people stay trapped because they mistake manipulation for love. They believe that if someone makes them feel guilty, it must mean they care. But let me ask you, if someone truly loves you, would they need to control you? Would they need to twist your emotions, make you feel bad for setting boundaries, and make you believe that their love is something you must constantly earn? Think of how Jesus loved. His love was never based on guilt. He never said, "If you truly loved me, you would prove it." Instead, his love was given freely, without condition, without control. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Love, true love, does not burden you with guilt. It lifts you. It frees you. It allows you to breathe without fear of disappointing someone who should be loving you unconditionally. But guilt manipulators do not operate this way. They thrive on your fear of losing them, on your desire to keep the peace, on your reluctance to be seen as selfish or ungrateful. They create an unspoken rule. Your feelings do not matter. Only theirs do. Your pain is irrelevant. Your exhaustion is secondary. Your own happiness must always come second to theirs. And the moment you try to reclaim your space, your peace, or your right to say no, they turn the tables and make you feel as though you are the problem. How many times have you found yourself apologizing just to make things right, even when you knew you did nothing wrong? How many times have you silenced your own discomfort just to avoid the guilt they would throw at you? How many times have you done things out of obligation rather than genuine desire? Because you knew that saying no would come at a cost. But here is the truth. Your love should never be a debt that you owe. The people who truly care about you will not demand that you constantly prove yourself. They will not hold past favors over your head. They will not guilt-trip you into submission. Love that requires you to betray yourself is not love at all. It is control, it is manipulation, and it is a form of bondage that God never intended for you. Even Jesus, who gave everything for the world, did not force anyone to follow him out of guilt. He simply offered his love and allowed people to choose. "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." Revelation 3:20. That is the nature of love. It knocks, it does not demand. It invites, it does not manipulate. So why do we allow ourselves to be controlled by those who claim to love us? Why do we let guilt override our own peace, our own well-being? Because deep down, we fear being seen as selfish. We fear being judged. We fear losing them, and that is exactly what manipulators rely on. They know that as long as they make you feel responsible for their happiness, you will never leave. You will stay even when you are hurting. You will bend even when you are breaking. But let me remind you, God is not calling you to live under the weight of someone else's manipulation. He is calling you to freedom. He is calling you to peace. He is calling you to recognize that your worth is not measured by how much you can endure from others. So ask yourself, who in your life makes you feel like love is a debt? Who makes you feel guilty for having boundaries? Who convinces you that your own happiness is a selfish thing to pursue? Because those who love you should never make you feel imprisoned. And the moment you recognize the chains of guilt, you will see that God never intended for them to hold you back. There is a painful truth that many of us hesitate to accept. Some people do not love you for who you are. They love you for what you can do for them. Their kindness is conditional, their attention fleeting, their loyalty tied not to your presence, but to their own convenience. When they need something, your time, your money, your energy, your emotional support, they are right there, speaking to you with warmth, making you feel important. But the moment their need is fulfilled, they disappear, leaving you wondering if the relationship ever truly mattered. At first, you may not notice it. It seems normal to help those you care about, to be available, to give when you can. After all, isn't that what love is? Sacrifice, support, being there when others need you. But over time, you begin to realize a pattern. You reach out when you need comfort, but they are too busy. You try to share your struggles, but they are uninterested. You give and you give and you give until one day you wake up empty, drained from carrying a relationship that only works when you are the one making all the effort. But let me remind you, this is not love. This is not friendship. This is not the way God intended relationships to be. Do two walk together unless they have agreed to do so? Amos 3:3. A relationship is meant to be mutual, a balance of giving and receiving, of supporting and being supported. But when someone only values you when they need something, you are not a person to them, you are a resource. Jesus himself encountered such people. Crowds followed him when he was performing miracles, when he was healing the sick, when he was feeding the thousands. But when the time came for true loyalty, when he was betrayed, arrested, and crucified, where were they? They scattered, they vanished. They took what they needed from him and left when he was no longer useful to them. And yet, Jesus was never blind to their nature. He understood that not everyone who walked with him did so out of love. Now, take a moment to reflect. Who in your life calls you only when they need something? Who remembers you only when it is convenient for them? Who treats your kindness not as a gift, but as an expectation? These people do not love you, they love the benefits of knowing you. And the danger of staying connected to such people is that you will begin to believe that your worth is tied to your usefulness. You will start to think that if you stop giving, if you stop helping, if you stop saying yes to every request, they will abandon you. And perhaps that is the truth. But ask yourself this: if someone only stays in your life because of what you can give them, is their presence truly a blessing, or is it a burden disguised as companionship? God does not call you to be used. He calls you to be loved. True relationships reflect the love of Christ. And what does Scripture say about love? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Corinthians 13:4-5. Love is not self-seeking. Love does not take without giving. Love does not drain you until you have nothing left. Yet so many people find themselves trapped in these one-sided relationships. They stay because they do not want to be seen as selfish. They continue giving because they fear that if they stop, they will have no one left. But let me tell you this: the right people, the people sent by God, will never love you only when they need something. They will love you for who you are, whether you are giving or not, whether you are strong or weak, whether you are helping them or simply existing in their life. Think about the relationships Jesus formed. He did not choose people based on what they could offer him. He chose the outcasts, the fishermen, the tax collectors, men who had nothing to give but themselves. And yet he loved them. He walked with them. He invested in them, not because of their usefulness, but because of their hearts. This is what real love looks like. But conditional love? That is not love at all. It is a transaction, a business deal disguised as a relationship. And if you are constantly surrounded by people who disappear when you have nothing to give, then perhaps it is time to see the truth. God is revealing who is truly for you, and who is only there for their own gain. So I ask you, who are the people in your life who make you feel valued only when you are useful? Who disappears when you need them the most? Who treats your presence as optional, but your help as a requirement? Because once you recognize them, you will begin to see what God has been trying to show you all along. You are never meant to be loved for what you provide. You are meant to be loved for who you are. There are few wounds deeper than the pain of being unheard. To cry out in distress, to share your burdens, to open your heart only to be met with silence, indifference, or worse, mockery. When someone you love dismisses your pain, they are not just ignoring your words, they are denying your reality. They are telling you in subtle but devastating ways that your suffering does not matter. It starts small. You express your hurt and they wave it away. You're overreacting. It wasn't that bad. You're too sensitive. What they fail to see is that these words do not comfort. They cut, they diminish, they make you doubt yourself. You start wondering, am I making a big deal out of nothing? Should I just stay silent? And so you begin to hold it in. You swallow your pain. You learn that expressing your emotions is not safe, not welcome. But let me tell you this, your pain is real. Your emotions matter. And the God who created you does not dismiss your suffering. He acknowledges it, He sees it, and He cares. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. If God Himself draws near to the broken-hearted, then why should any human being have the right to turn you away? If the Creator of the universe acknowledges your suffering, why should you allow anyone in your life to belittle it? Yet, so many people remain in relationships, whether with family, friends, or even a spouse, where their pain is constantly disregarded. They continue seeking validation from those who refuse to give it. They try harder to explain themselves, to be understood, to make someone finally care. But the truth is, when someone has already decided that your emotions are not important, there is nothing you can do to change their mind. Jesus Himself experienced this. As He prepared for the greatest suffering of His life, He went to the Garden of Gethsemane with His disciples. He was overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Matthew 26:38. And He asked His closest friends to stay awake with Him, to be there in His moment of anguish. But what did they do? They fell asleep. They were indifferent to His suffering. They did not stand with Him in His pain, and yet Jesus did not let their failure define His worth. He did not beg them to care. He did not waste His time trying to make them understand. Instead, He turned to His Father, the only one who truly sees, truly hears, truly cares. Now, I ask you, how many times have you cried out to someone only to be met with silence? How many times have you shared your struggle only to be told to get over it? How many times have you suffered in plain sight, yet felt invisible to the very people who were supposed to love you? Dismissing your pain is a form of emotional neglect, and emotional neglect is no less damaging than outright abuse. It sends a message that you are not worthy of comfort, that your feelings are an inconvenience, that your suffering is your own burden to bear alone. But that is a lie, because the God who formed you does not leave you alone in your sorrow. He does not dismiss you. He does not tell you to move on without healing. He acknowledges your wounds, and He will not allow those who ignored your pain to escape accountability. Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees. Isaiah 10 verse 1. Those who continuously dismiss and invalidate your suffering are acting against the very heart of God. They may think they are escaping judgment, but God sees, and He will deal with them in His time. But as for you, it is time to open your eyes. If someone consistently belittles your pain, if they mock your emotions, if they make you feel weak for having feelings, they are not a safe person. They are not a person sent by God to uplift you. Love does not dismiss. Love listens. Love comforts. Love stands beside you in your suffering. And if someone in your life refuses to do that, then it may be time to ask yourself, why are you still allowing them access to your heart? There are some people who seem to thrive in conflict. No matter how peaceful your life is, no matter how much you try to maintain stability, they always find a way to bring disorder, tension, and emotional turmoil. These individuals are not content with peace. They need drama, manipulation, and instability to feel in control. And if you are not careful, they will drag you into their chaos, making you believe that constant turmoil is normal. At first, it may seem like a coincidence. One day everything is calm, and the next there is an argument, a misunderstanding, an issue that never should have existed in the first place. And the more you reflect, the more you realize these conflicts are never truly about you. They are created, stirred up, and manipulated by the very person who claims to love you. They find ways to twist words, misinterpret your actions, and keep you in a constant state of walking on eggshells, wondering when the next storm will hit. But let me remind you, God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33. If a relationship is constantly filled with drama, if someone's presence in your life always brings stress, tension, and emotional exhaustion, then that is not a relationship that is aligned with God's will for you. Think about the way Jesus lived. Though he walked among sinners, though he faced opposition, he himself was a presence of peace. Wherever he went, he brought healing, wisdom, and restoration. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. Those who truly love you will not add to your burdens. They will help lift them. But a person who thrives in chaos will do the opposite. They will never let you rest. They will keep you caught up in arguments over things that don't matter. They will create problems where none exist. They will turn people against you, spread false narratives, and make you question your own reality. And over time, without even realizing it, you will find yourself drained, not because life is hard, but because the person in your life refuses to let peace exist. But why do they do this? Because chaos is their way of maintaining control. A peaceful mind can think clearly, can set boundaries, can recognize toxicity, but a mind that is constantly in distress, constantly caught up in conflict, is too exhausted to see the truth. The more they pull you into their cycle of drama, the harder it becomes to step back and recognize that their presence is the problem. Think about how the enemy works. He does not always attack directly. Sometimes he simply fills your life with distractions, with unnecessary conflicts, with emotional turmoil that keeps you too busy, too drained to focus on what truly matters. And he will often use people who claim to love you, people who pretend to care, yet constantly introduce confusion, instability, and fear into your life. So ask yourself, who in your life brings unnecessary chaos? Who always has a crisis, a problem, an issue that requires your energy, your attention, your emotional investment? Who makes it impossible for you to feel at peace for long periods of time? God does not call you to live in constant distress. He calls you to peace. And if someone in your life is determined to keep you trapped in their cycles of chaos, it is time to recognize that their presence is not a blessing, it is a burden, and burdens that are not from God are never meant to be carried. There is a kind of silence that is not peaceful, a kind of silence that weighs on the soul like a heavy chain. It is the silence of fear, the fear of speaking your truth, of expressing your thoughts, of being honest about your emotions. When you are around certain people, you find yourself hesitating before you speak, carefully choosing your words, analyzing every sentence. Because deep down you know that honesty comes with consequences. Maybe they will get angry. Maybe they will mock you. Maybe they will twist your words, making you feel guilty for having an opinion at all. And so you stay quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because you have learnt that saying what is truly in your heart is dangerous. But let me tell you something. God did not give you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. If someone in your life makes you afraid to speak, if they control you through intimidation, anger, or emotional manipulation, then they are not acting in alignment with God's will. Because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17. And true love does not require you to silence yourself in order to maintain peace. But this is exactly what toxic people want. They do not want peace, they want control. When you are afraid to speak, they have power over you. When you hold back your feelings, they can continue treating you however they wish without accountability. When they make you believe that your thoughts do not matter, they strip you of your confidence, your identity, your voice. And before you know it, you are no longer living as the person God created you to be. You are living as a version of yourself that they have designed. But ask yourself this: is this how God intended for you to live? Look at the life of Jesus. He never silenced truth to avoid offending people. He never withheld wisdom just to make others comfortable. He spoke boldly, even when it angered those in power. He confronted lies, exposed corruption, and declared truth, even when it led to rejection, hatred, and ultimately the cross. He was not afraid to speak, and if you are a child of God, then neither should you be. But toxic people have a way of making you believe that silence is survival. They use their anger like a weapon, punishing you for honesty. They manipulate you with guilt, making you feel like speaking up is an act of betrayal. They mock your words, belittle your concerns, and twist your truth until you start questioning your own thoughts. And the longer this continues, the more you shrink. At first it is small. You hold back on certain topics. You avoid saying things that might upset them. But then, over time, you begin to change entirely. You lose your ability to express yourself. You second-guess every thought. You feel like you are walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid setting them off. And this is where the real danger lies. Because when you lose your voice, you lose yourself. The enemy wants nothing more than to silence the people of God. He knows that words have power. He knows that truth can set people free, John 8:32. He knows that when a person stands firm in their convictions, they become unstoppable. And so he sends people into your life to suppress you, to make you doubt yourself, to create fear so deep that you no longer speak the truth God placed within you. But you were not created to be silent. Let your light shine before others. Matthew 5:16. You were designed to be a light in the darkness, not to be hidden under the weight of someone else's intimidation. You were created to walk in truth, not in fear. So if someone in your life makes you afraid to speak, if you feel like you have to carefully measure every word just to avoid conflict, ask yourself, is this love or is this control? Is this respect or is this oppression? God's love does not silence, it strengthens. And if you have been made to believe that your voice is a problem, then perhaps it is time to recognize that the real problem is the person who does not want to hear it. There are people in your life who, when you leave their presence, make you feel lighter, stronger, and more encouraged. And then there are those who drain you, who take your energy, who exhaust your spirit, who leave you feeling emotionally depleted every time you interact with them. These are the people who do not pour into you, but instead take from you until you have nothing left to give. At first, you may not notice it. You may believe that you are simply being a good friend, a good family member, a good partner, supporting them, helping them, listening to them. But over time, a pattern emerges. Every conversation revolves around their problems. Every moment is spent catering to their needs. Every ounce of energy you have is poured into keeping them happy, while they offer nothing in return. And the worst part? They do not even see it. But let me remind you, you were never created to be someone's emotional dumping ground. Yes, we are called to bear one another's burdens, Galatians 6:02. Yes, love requires patience, kindness, and selflessness. But love is not supposed to be one-sided. Relationships are meant to be reciprocal. And if someone is constantly taking from you, your time, your peace, your energy, without ever giving anything back, then what you have is not love. It is emotional depletion disguised as connection. And this is exactly how the enemy works. One of his greatest tactics is not just to attack you directly, but to surround you with people who drain you, who take your focus off God, who leave you too exhausted to pray, too emotionally weak to pursue your purpose, too caught up in their constant crises to even consider your own needs. Because the enemy knows this: a weary soul is easier to control. And when you are constantly drained, you stop fighting. You stop standing up for yourself. You stop pursuing your dreams. You stop listening to the voice of God, because all you can hear is the never-ending demands of the person who refuses to let you rest. But here's the truth. God is a God of restoration, not depletion. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Isaiah 40:29. If a relationship in your life is leaving you more drained than strengthened, then something is deeply wrong. Because when God places people in your life, they do not come to steal your peace. They come to support your purpose. Think about Jesus. Even though he was constantly giving, teaching, healing, leading, he still made time to rest. He withdrew to be alone with the Father, Luke 5:16. He spent time with those who strengthened him, like Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, John 11:05. He did not allow people to drain him beyond what was necessary for his mission. He understood that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Yet so many of us allow people in our lives who do just that. We keep answering their calls even when we are exhausted. We keep showing up for them even when they have never once shown up for us. We keep trying to fix their problems even when they refuse to fix themselves. And deep down, we know we are running on empty. But ask yourself this: is this love, or is this obligation? Is this kindness, or is this manipulation? Because true love, godly love, does not drain you. It nourishes you. It fills you up. It does not leave you broken, exhausted, or overwhelmed. And if someone in your life is constantly taking without ever giving, then maybe it is time to step back and ask yourself, who are they helping and who are they hurting? There comes a time when you must stop ignoring the signs, a time when you must open your eyes to the reality of those around you, who truly loves you and who only seeks to control, manipulate, or drain you. You were not created to live in bondage to toxic relationships. You were not meant to spend your life walking on eggshells, questioning your worth, or suppressing your truth just to keep the peace with people who do not respect you. God has called you to something greater. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future, Jeremiah 29:11. But you cannot step into the future God has prepared for you if you are still holding on to relationships that He has been trying to remove from your life. Every betrayal, every moment of rejection, every instance of being diminished, manipulated, or drained, it was not meant to break you, but to teach you, to show you who is truly for you and who is not, to reveal that your peace is more important than their approval, your purpose is more valuable than their validation, and your spirit is too precious to be given to those who do not cherish it. Yes, it is hard to walk away. Yes, it is painful to let go of people you once loved. But remember this: you are not walking away alone. The God who sees your suffering, who has witnessed every tear, who has counted every silent pain, He is with you, and He is leading you towards something better. You do not have to stay in relationships that crush your spirit. You do not have to keep proving your worth to those who refuse to see it. You do not have to continue giving to those who only take. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to protect your peace. And if you ever doubt that, remember this: Jesus Himself did not beg people to stay. He did not chase after those who rejected Him. He did not force love where it was not freely given. He walked in His purpose, and He trusted that the ones who were meant to walk with Him would remain. Now, the question is, will you have the courage to do the same? If this message spoke to you, if you see yourself in these words, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, Who in my life is draining me? Who is manipulating me? Who is silencing my truth? And most importantly, what is God telling me to do about it? It is time to break free. It is time to reclaim your peace. It is time to step into the life God has prepared for you. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts, share your experiences, and remember, you are not alone in this journey. May God bless you and give you the strength to walk in His truth.